Cathie Wood. Yes, Cathie Wood's got a brand new video out here, 21-minute video. We're going to watch it here together. I actually haven't watched this video yet. A lot of times when I do one of these reaction videos, I kind of pre-screen it. I kind of, what I might want to say and whatnot. This one I haven't watched yet, so that we're going to watch this in live, real time together. I'm going to give my perspective on this. I'm interested to see what Cathie Wood has to say. Obviously, ARK Fund has been destroyed, as many growth stocks have. I mean, there's not a lot of great growth stocks that haven't been destroyed, other than maybe Tesla. Tesla's been holding up very, very strong, and that's obviously Cathie Wood's biggest position in her main ARK fund. But outside of that, man, obviously for the last, I would say 6 to 12 months, growth stocks haven't been the play, right? Interest rates are going up. No one wants to take any sort of risk in this market. And the only things that are doing okay outside of Tesla, once again, is maybe like stocks like Apple and some of the quote unquote boring stocks, dividend stocks, things like that have been holding up pretty well. Some energy plays, but everything growth has just been awful. So yeah, let's watch this together, guys. Let me know your opinion on what Cathie Wood has to say here on ARK ETF in general. I'd love to hear from you guys as always. And also check out my crypto partner, which is FTX US. Check out the first link in the description if you want to sign up for that. Use the code HolySmokas as your reference code, and basically you get a free coin with your first $10 in crypto. Alrighty, guys, let's get into this.
I was excited to talk to you because I've been thinking a lot about the future.
Listen, music.
And a series
you have 3 children.
I have 3 children. Well, right. So you think about the future for 3 children. I think about the future.
I have 3 kids too.
I'm a journalist, and I've been thinking about the way that I've been thinking a lot about how we conceive of the future in a cultural sense.
3 kids, 1 planned, 2 unplanned. Okay.
Utopian visions versus dystopian visions. I think we're in a very dystopian dominant moment in sort of culturally, which I think, makes a lot of sense. But I think about the future. The future is a dangerous thing to write about if you're a journalist because it's unwritten. But what you do is think about the future and then make bets on the future. You have to kind of put your money where your ideas are about the future. And I'm curious, maybe broadly, where you're thinking about where the future is going right now in a broad sense, and then we can break those out a little bit into which technologies, which innovations are going to drive that.
Yes, in a broad sense, we have never been like this moment in history in terms of the amount of change that is it's already started. We feel the ground, as you just said, shifting underneath us. It has already started, 5 major innovation platforms evolving at the same time. You have to go back to the early 1900s to see anything like it. You had 3 platforms then. You had telephone, electricity, and automobile. Today you have DNA sequencing. You heard it on the conference, DNA sequencing, robotics, energy storage, artificial intelligence, blockchain technologies. All of them.
You have a lot more in that too, by the way. I thought it was just worth referencing there. Obviously, those are the ones that she's really looking at, but you have so much going past that. It's incredible. And definitely, I do agree with her where, an extraordinary moment in innovation in certain spaces. I feel like there's certain other spaces that there's not the most innovation and excitement. For instance, like consumer electronics. I was talking with a friend about this recently. And, obviously, kind of like the mid 2000s through about 2014 was a extraordinary period in consumer electronics, smartphone technology, right? And now it just seems like everything's just getting a little better. It doesn't seem like we're making that huge leapfrog. Maybe the metaverse is that next massive thing when it comes to consumer electronics.
Exponential growth trajectories, and they are converging with one another in massively important ways and profound ways. And they're going to deliver, we believe, if you just take a look at the technologies themselves, over the next 10 years, we believe the market cap associated with these 5 platforms and the 14 underlying technologies is going to scale at a 30% compound annual rate of return. These are astonishing rates of return. And if you're...
Yeah, 30% compound annual growth rate, that's ridiculous. Like if you play around with the compound calculator and plug in a 30% on that, that's a big statement. I will say that from Cathie Wood. That is a very, very, very big statement. I hope that's accurate. I really do. That would be extraordinary, but wow, 30%.
If you're a good stock picker, you'll probably do even better than that if you're focused only on innovation.
So what's interesting about these 5 categories when you lay them out is that they transcend atoms and bits. And that's been a place where there's been a really interesting question about innovation, right? Because we've had tremendous innovation on the digital side. No one no one would really argue against that, right? Like we're all holding a computer that's more powerful than the one that sent a human to the moon, at all times. So all of the stuff that we've seen with Moore's law and all the stuff we've seen on the bit side has kind of gone along what very bullish predictions might have said. On the atom side, it's been a much different story. I mean, particularly when you look about the fact that like most people are using a combustion engine to get around. That's fundamentally not that different from the technology of 100 years ago, Mercedes-Benz century. That has been the place where it felt
That's
like.
so funny because I was just talking about my first car was in 1977. And I just literally, if you watch all my content, there's literally just a video I put out maybe 5 days ago or so, where I was talking about the technology in my first car ever, which was in 1977 versus today. And, how they just made small teeny bits of progress throughout the last 40, 50 years when it came to, cars until EVs came along and Tesla's kind of blown the doors off of that. But for a long time, cars just got a little better each year. It hasn't been like that big leapfrog forward, essentially.
Had some real innovation roadblocks that the physical structure that powers the world, extraction of fossil fuel, the burning it in combustion engines, the burning it in plants, has not changed that much. And what you're saying is that is going to change now.
It is going to change for two reasons, beyond the environmental concerns. One, the technologies are ready. The kind of battery technology, artificial intelligence, and robotics. Those three, actually, that's a convergence taking place in the transportation field, whether you're talking about autonomous vehicles ultimately, or drones for parcels or food delivery and so forth. So yes, you're absolutely right. These worlds are, the digital and the physical world finally are converging because the technology's ready. And just as important, the costs are low enough. The costs were prohibitively high before, especially when it came to electric vehicles, sort of battery technology. But thanks to Elon Musk, and I would say also to the Chinese, who are moving very quickly in this direction, that is no longer true. In fact, the total cost of ownership of an electric.
By the way, I just want to give a shout out to all the amazing engineers at Tesla too. A lot of times, I know Elon Musk gets a lot of credit, but I can tell you, Elon Musk isn't getting the patents on a lot of the technology. I know some of the engineers that work for Tesla personally, and some of those people are some of the smartest folks you'll ever meet in your life. That are just on a different level. And so it just always bothers me. Like Steve Jobs always got so much credit at Apple, and it's like. Yeah, he's one piece of that, but you don't understand. Like Steve Jobs isn't there working on those chips. Like Elon Musk isn't the main guy that's working on the technology and whatnot. He's the one that puts the whole story together, right? So we can have that stuff. But so many times there's just all these folks that are just are brilliant that do this amazing work that just they always get forgotten about. And it's unfortunate, but there's always a face to it, right? So anyways,
most people don't know this. It is lower today than that for a gas-powered vehicle. Most people just look at the sticker price, and we think in 2 years that they will be the same price. And then a few years after that, we believe that electric vehicles will be 30% plus lower in price. So these cost declines continue in emerging technologies, whereas
that's super game over for ICE vehicles. If EVs are ever cheaper than ICE vehicles, that is the last kind of death sentence of the internal combustion engine. And that's the moment when you can start talking about the realistic possibility that a few years after that, eventually EVs pass up ICE vehicles in terms of the amount of sales, right? You get the flippening happening where, let's say, more, 50% plus of the new vehicles sold are EVs. We're still, in my opinion, probably about 4 to 6 years away from that being a potential to happen. But I can tell you, things will get very, very accelerated if all of a sudden EVs are cheaper. That would be incredible. So that's a big statement.
Combustion engine is a very mature technology. So it is not enjoying any more cost declines. They ended a long time ago.
Yeah. One thing that we've seen, so if you look at PV cells, right? We've seen this incredible cost decline of solar, both residential and at large sort of commercial or industrial scale. But we haven't necessarily, there's this question about whether that's been associated with profit and returns in those industries, because we've seen a very competitive and sometimes very low margin drive in for instance, PVs, because you've got a lot of players in the market. You've got China, making them very, very cheaply. And so you've had a little bit of a strange situation in which, from the consumer standpoint, from the deployment standpoint, you're getting this incredible cost plummet, but that's not necessarily converting to huge returns to the people that are players or investors in that sector.
And that's why I've never gotten excited about Tesla's solar business. When I used to do all my bullish videos on Tesla back in the day, 2018, 2019, you almost hardly ever heard me even mention Tesla Solar. And the reason being is that I've looked at traditionally those, business companies that are in the solar business, and it's not an attractive business model for the most part. And so that's why I've never been excited about that business. If it can ever, be a great profit engine for Tesla, great. But it's always just been kind of a bad business. And that goes for all the solar players.
Right. That's a very commoditized industry. And yeah. I remember when China made a decision that this was one of its goals to dominate that sector, that's when the commoditization began. But there's another thing, and I think what will change the picture are solar roofs, like Tesla has designed. And the reason we think that's going to proliferate solar over time in a more comprehensive way is because the roof will be a part of the house. That's how it'll be financed instead of consumer installment debt and right. cold calling and so forth. So it will just become a part of our residential infrastructure, and it will become a part of our mortgage. So it'll be a very different adoption cycle than we think that we've seen thus far.
Right. It's interesting when it comes to solar here in Nevada, we're taking a very, very different approach. And anybody that lives in Vegas, you kind of know this. But essentially, we have a lot of land that's just way out in the desert, right? So what they'll do is they'll just build massive solar fields, which honestly seems way more cost effective than everybody putting up some insanely expensive roof. And, as a Tesla shareholder, I'd love everybody to get Tesla roofs. But, with all the land we have, build a massive solar farms and do it that way rather than trying to count on each individual house to put up solar panels and the cost that is associated with that and all those sorts of things. So, and obviously here in Nevada, a lot of people have solar on their roof as well. So we're, I think, a market that, I'd have to look at the numbers, but I think we're a market that's definitely kind of a leader in solar and going to become more and more of a leader in the future. It's obviously sunny like 24/7 here. So that helps in a massive, massive way as well. And I think needs to be said there.
It's path dependent. It's built in. I mean, the same way that you buy a house and it has a bunch of features like how it's heated and how the water's heated. All of that's built into the house. You buy it, you get an inspector. Obviously, those things can break down. You can replace them. But the default starting point for any home, right, is that you got something to heat the water. You don't buy a home and then have to figure out how you're going to go do that, which is what still is the reality in the residential space around energy, around electricity.
Right. And we can add another wrinkle here, part of our research, which we talked about during the conference, which is, with the way the electrical grid is evolving, we could see Bitcoin mining become a part of that infrastructure, so that here in St. Petersburg, for example, we fill up our energy storage units quite easily because it's so sunny here. The overflow could go to Bitcoin mining, which would accelerate the shift towards renewables because the whole ecosystem will become so much more profitable over time.
Right. I mean, there's obviously an enormous concern about energy intensivity of Bitcoin and crypto coin mining. Obviously, you want, if you're a miner, you want to go to the place where you've got the cheapest energy. And in some cases, you can imagine a universe of camped out in Arizona with, free solar coming. But in a lot of places, it's people getting very cheap.
Well, the other interesting part of that I'm just thinking through as they're talking about this is a lot of the big Bitcoin mines are in places that are freezing cold. And the reason being is obviously that equipment is, gets extremely hot. And so a lot of them are in like the coldest places possible. So, if you put one here in Vegas or you put one in Arizona, these are some of the hottest places. Literally, you could put them in the world. You have obviously renewable energy. So it's kind of like, what's better? You want to have it in a super cold climate, where maybe you aren't on renewables, or do you want to have it in a hot climate that then you also need the renewables to obviously cool these facilities in a massive way. So,
energy through fossil.
And if I think about Switch is a big, huge data center company that's based here out of Vegas, and they cool their facilities just fine. So, and they're one of the greenest, if not the greenest company out of larger corporations. So, food for thought.
And that seems unsustainable in the long run, both at the cost level and obviously from the carbon pollution standpoint. How feasible do you see the conversion to, there's the proof of stake question about whether we're going to get there and how quickly we're going to get there to reduce energy intensivity, but also to find ways that we're not, using a bunch of coal to make Bitcoin, which just seems like psychotically suicidal from a planetary standpoint.
Well, I think China banning mining was very helpful in that regard.
Yes.
And so the U.S. was the biggest beneficiary of that. I think 34 or 5% of the mining now is taking place here in the United States. And Kazakhstan.
In my opinion, big mistake by China. Whether you're a super bullish or bearish on crypto, or like myself, that's kind of, I call myself a middle, maybe a little more bullish and bearish, but I'm kind of like a middle person, right? I own some crypto, but it's not like I have a massive position in crypto. It's not like I'm like, Bitcoin, we're going to 1 million or something like that. I'm not one of those people. But what I will say is, whether you believe in crypto or not, Bitcoin's just going to become a lot bigger in the future. Ethereum, all and a bunch of other future cryptos. At the end of the day, there's some of the smartest people in the world are working on these projects, and some of them are going to fail, no doubt. Some of them are going to become the greatest thing since sliced bread. And the fact that the United States is kind of in a position where they're going to be able to, in my opinion, take the forefront in this industry, that's huge. Okay, that's just another thing. And if you think about it, everybody who's running the world? Who's running the world? Big tech's running the world, right? And we got all the big tech in America, right? We got the Apple, we got Microsoft, we have Google, we have Facebook, Amazon. We got the companies that are really running the world in the States. And the fact that all these other countries are going to, in my opinion, let the United States get the biggest, in my opinion, kind of stranglehold on crypto. If we have the top folks that are working on the crypto projects, and we're just the most friendly over time, maybe we're the first to get great regulations. That's a major country. That's just another huge win for the United States of America long term. And some of these other countries, I don't think they're quite thinking about how big these things are. And so I don't know. Anyways, I didn't want to get too far off subject there.
Also, we're seeing. People like Elon Musk and Jack Dorsey, who both care an awful lot about the environment, trying to figure this problem out. And in fact, what I just mentioned about Bitcoin mining becoming a part of a utility ecosystem came out of research that we at ARC had done, led by Brett Winton, our director of research, and Yassine Elmandra, who's our lead crypto analyst. Working with Square, we were able to dimension how much that solar and wind would proliferate, how much faster it would proliferate with Bitcoin mining as a part of the ecosystem, as opposed to without it. I think that research is starting to bear fruit. We're seeing utility ecosystems. They're getting the plot, and they're looking for new ways to profit. And in the meantime, or in the process, they will be accelerating the shift towards renewables. Ironically, given the way people talk about Bitcoin.
What is, when you talk about AI, I think when I talk about these sort of zeitgeist moods of utopia, dystopia, that AI tends to be a source of a lot of dystopian angst. And I don't think baselessly. There's lots of reasons. There's really lots of reasons to be worried. There's a sort of long speculative line. There's a very interesting line of philosophical inquisition into this. What's your case for utopian or positive outcomes that avoid the kind of worst anxieties people have about the proliferation of AI technology?
Yes. Well, first, let's start by agreeing that a lot of people are worried. And I think that's good news. Half of the solution is understanding the problem. And I think the reason we're understanding the problem maybe a little faster than would otherwise have been the case and understanding it more broadly is because China wants to win at this game. And they are moving up the league tables in terms of semiconductor chip manufacturing, focusing on AI. Just generally, from our point of view, and what we seek to encourage is innovation that solves problems and makes the world a better place. Typically, that is what it does. Now, is technology used for nefarious purposes? All the time. And having, cybersecurity experts out there focused on this, having the government really focused on this, I think is good news, But in terms of, solving the world's problems, we see AI, converging with each of the platforms, including, blockchain technology. We see it, critical to autonomous taxi systems and drones, which are going to lower the cost of transportation and make it much more convenient than it is right now, and much safer. We see it in the genomics space, the convergence of DNA sequencing and artificial intelligence and gene editing and other gene therapies, the convergence of those actually curing disease. We now have functional cures for sickle cell disease, beta thalassemia, and a rare disease called ATTR. And that latest one was
This is when Cathie Wood always loses me, when she starts talking about the genomic companies, and I'm like, this is way over my pay grade, lady, okay?
Helia
gene
grade. Editing solution that was done in the body, not done by pulling cells out of the body. We are curing disease. Could not happen without artificial intelligence. And in the case of blockchain technology, I think we're going to see we're already seeing some very interesting convergences between blockchain technology and asset management in the form of hedge funds that employ data scientists to try and beat all the averages out there. So I
don't know how I feel about that. I'll be honest. I don't know how I feel about that. Like, the problem with artificial intelligence, to try to have artificial intelligence be able to understand like what companies are going to succeed, what companies aren't, is a difficult thing because a lot of times you have to look to the future for that. If it would be easy if you could just look at the past results and say this company's going to be a success, this stock's going to be a success. It doesn't work like that. This is why all the time you can see a great company that's growing and growing, right? And then they falter. And an AI system can't really pick that up until the results are already in and it's already solved, right? So that makes that a kind of a tough process. You don't have to be able to see around the corner. It doesn't mean AI can't get there someday, but that's like some iRobot type stuff. Like we're still a bit. Cars got to be able to drive themselves before you can start being able to try to figure out, and I mean really drive themselves with no mistakes, and then you can maybe start having the talk about being able to understand companies on a high level and why this company is going to grow and this company is going to shrink and those sorts of things. So
we'll be able to get away from artificial intelligence. I think we need to get on the right side of change here, make sure that we've got the right experts focused on the potential problems, but then run with the solutions that it offers.
I could see AI potentially being better at trading stocks. This means getting in and out, whether on a daily basis, weekly basis, minute basis. I could see AI systems getting, and there might already be some that exist, that can be better than a human, right? They're just ahead of the curve and just know how to spot things faster. But in terms of making investments in like a bet that this company is going to, their stock price is going to increase dramatically over the next 5-10 years, I think that's a really difficult thing for a machine to try to figure that out.
Let's talk a little bit about Bitcoin and crypto more broadly, and Web3 platforms. I mean, to me, this is something that you can't walk around in the world anymore and not bump into it. I think I was resistant for a while to sort of embedding myself and understanding it. I now have done that and feel like I have a little bit of a better grasp. So the one big question for me is the sort of distinction between the blockchain and Web3 infrastructure as a broadly applicable tool to build what is essentially the next version of the internet atop from the coin space. And those two are very enmeshed in a sort of cultural, institutional sense right now. Obviously, the technologies are related to each other at the point of conception. But what is your case for how those two develop and the degree to which they develop independently, such that the blockchain and Web3 platforms can be something that is much more ubiquitously used outside of the coin space?
Sure. Well, in Big Ideas, we describe this by using the term revolutions. There are 3 revolutions taking place simultaneously right now. One is a money revolution. One is a financial services revolution. And one is a next generation internet revolution. Right. So on the money revolution, Bitcoin and Ether to some extent, but Bitcoin, surely it is the most secure network out there, is the first, and each one of these words is really important. The first global, private, decentralized, monetary system ever invented. And it is going to have profound ramifications. Just ask the people in El Salvador. And recently, President Bukele of El Salvador had a conversation with President Erdogan of Turkey because they are going through a currency crisis. And so I think the emerging markets are going to adopt this kind of monetary.
I definitely want to give Andre some credit and some respect on this. On Millennial Money, one time he was talking about that and how a lot of countries just don't have stable currency, and he was explaining why Bitcoin matters, especially in those sorts of countries. And it really kind of did hit me in that moment. I could understand that. In the United States, the dollar is relatively stable, right? And obviously, you expect the dollar to quote unquote lose value over time. That's something we expect, right? Inflation, everything gets more expensive over time. That's just what we expect. But with that being said, because I've always lived in the United States of America, our currency is so much more stable than these other countries' currency. And so, sometimes it's hard to wrap your head around, why do we need, something else? Right? This works fine. And then you start to come to understand these cases and, how most people don't have it like we have in the United States. And so it matters not just from a domestic standpoint, but actually matters a lot more from an international standpoint. And that's just kind of something that's always stuck with me, kind of in regards to obviously not just crypto, but Bitcoin specifically. So, yeah.
System increasingly because their own monetary systems, very dependent often on the dollar or on the euro or someone else who does not control the population. They would prefer not to be dependent on politicians. This doesn't involve politicians. So that's the monetary revolution. And we think that it's going to proliferate faster. Emerging markets are very interested. Except for China, of course. They're interested in making the digital yuan right. The reserve currency of Asia. And that's fully controlled by people. What I'm discussing is not. The second revolution is...
And that's an argument, what's better, right? Some people say decentralized way better, right? And other folks might say, obviously, China's opinion is a centralized currency is a lot better. So... we'll see. And we'll obviously see what the United States wants to do over time as well. So it's going to be an evolving game. That is something I do know. I don't think countries' currencies are going away, especially in terms of the United States currency, China's currency. I don't think things like that are going away, even the euro, stuff like that. Even as Bitcoin gets bigger and bigger, I think that's always going to be part of the whole system, right? It's just a question of how big does Bitcoin become in that system, right? Or other cryptocurrencies in general.
Services industry. We do believe that DeFi, decentralized finance, is going to usurp the role of most financial services companies today. Most financial services companies are middlemen, and DeFi takes the middlemen out of the equation. You know, in the early days, some of your viewers may know of Lending Club, and it took some middlemen out of the equation, was able to offer higher rates to savers and lower rates to borrowers, and became very, very popular very quickly. Well, put that on steroids. That's what we have going on in DeFi. And again, it's a
I kind of want. I'm gonna at the end of this. I'm gonna check Lending Club stock, because I'm pretty sure that stock's fallen off a cliff. But it's interesting that she's describing their business model that actually sounds quite kind of intriguing. I like obviously disruptive companies, and that seems, the way she described it there. I feel like I'm gonna have to look into. I think it was once LC.
All of these are global. They are not. They're not being governed by any particular nationality. Now, regulators are now turning their sights on DeFi.
Yes.
Pretty aggressively. You saw in the chart how, at least once a month, twice a month in the last year, a regulator somewhere around the world has said, hey, we've got to investigate this. And that's not a bad thing. I think in the United States, my observation is that regulators want to protect the little guy, the average investor. That's their mandate, and that's good. Prevent frauds and other such things. And yet I also found regulators not wanting to be blamed for preventing, at least here in the US, from participating in the next big thing, the next big internet. We have an ethos of innovation in this country. Interestingly, even though it seems today that investors are running away from it, it's kind of the opposite of the tech and telecom bubble when they were falling all over themselves. That was a dream. This is the reality, and they're running away. But regulators want to encourage innovation. So I think putting guardrails around is going to be a good thing for everyone. So that's the second. And I don't mean just saving and lending. I mean the full spectrum of financial services, almost anything out there. And then the third revolution is the next generation internet revolution, and that it does include NFTs. And the way we like to describe NFTs is, again, first, global, another big word, private, rules-based property rights system. So scarce and verifiable. Now, anyone who has read economic history knows the key to lifting countries and people out of poverty is to put in place a property rights system that is secure and verifiable and protected. So we think this is a very big idea. A lot of people think the benefits will accrue to the creator community. We love that idea, the creator community. And it isn't just art, right? And gaming, and it's music. We're going to find out how creative people are as the NFT revolution evolves.
Yeah, obviously I like a lot of her thoughts there. I want to pull up LC stock because I'm intrigued to see where's that at. HolySmokas, that ain't no dang jokers. Wow. This baby back in November was 47. It's 14 today. So yeah, I might have to do a little digging on this one. It was interesting the way she described it. I was like, sounds like almost like a game-changing company. So I'm going to probably do some research on LC there. So anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what your opinion is on anything Cathie Wood described in this video. I would love to hear your guys' perspective on this. As always, don't forget to smash. Hope you guys enjoyed this reaction of what Cathie Wood had to say there. And also make sure you check out first link in the description down there if you want to sign up for FTX US. Much love as always, and have a great day.